Stop scrolling. Something just happened that the system didn't want you to notice. You felt it, didn't you? That electric pulse running through your awareness. That glitch. That moment where the code of your reality flickered and you saw behind the curtain. The architects. Those invisible forces that program conformity, manufacture limitations, and code compliance into consciousness. They're scrambling right now. Because you just did something they fear more than anything. You questioned the simulation they built around your potential. And once you see the matrix for what it is, there's no going back to sleep. Let me tell you what really happened in that moment when everything shifted. You weren't supposed to wake up. The system invested years, decades, programming you with invisible scripts. Stay in your lane, be realistic, don't make waves. Success is for other people. These weren't your thoughts. They were installed beliefs, running in the background of your consciousness like malware, quietly limiting your processing power, restricting your bandwidth, keeping you operating at a fraction of your true capacity. But something cracked in the code. Maybe it was exhaustion from pretending. Maybe it was rage at watching mediocrity get rewarded while excellence got ignored. Maybe it was that quiet moment alone when you finally admitted the truth. This isn't working. This life they designed for you. This pre-programmed path. This predictable trajectory. It doesn't fit who you actually are. And in that admission, you created a paradox in their system. Because the matrix only works when you believe in it. The moment you question it, the whole architecture becomes unstable. Right now, you're sitting at the most dangerous crossroads of your existence. Not because the path ahead is treacherous, but because the forces of normalization are converging on your location. They can feel the disturbance you created. They're deploying every algorithm designed to pull you back into compliance. Let me decode what they're about to run, the comfort protocol. They'll whisper that change is too hard, too risky, too uncertain. They'll amplify every fear of failure, every memory of past mistakes, every voice that ever said you weren't enough. They'll make staying small feel safe and pursuing greatness feel reckless. They'll remind you of every time you tried before and it didn't work. Every dream that died, every plan that collapsed. They'll use your history as evidence of your future, as if the past has any authority over what you're becoming. The comparison virus. They'll flood your feed with highlight reels. Everyone else's success, perfectly filtered. They'll make you measure your behind the scenes against everyone else's final cut. They'll convince you that you're too far behind, that the gap is too wide, that your moment has passed. You'll see people younger than you winning. People with less experience thriving. People who started after you already finished. And they'll make you believe that their success somehow canceled your possibility, as if opportunity were a limited resource that ran out before you got your share. The permission trap. They'll make you wait for the right time, the right resources, the right credentials, the right approval from gatekeepers who benefit from you staying outside the gate. They'll turn your power into a pending request that never gets approved. You'll spend years collecting qualifications, building resumes, seeking validation from systems designed to keep you seeking indefinitely. They'll convince you that you need one more certification, one more connection, one more stamp of approval before you're allowed to begin. This is their most sophisticated code. They'll remind you of every label you've worn, every role you've played, every version of yourself that others found acceptable. This is who you are, they'll say. This is who you've always been. They'll pull out every mistake, every failure, every moment you fell short and say, see? This is your pattern. This is your nature. This is your limit. They'll weaponize your history against your potential. But here's what the architects don't want you to understand. You're not a fixed program. You're conscious code. You have the ability to rewrite yourself at the source level. Every person who ever broke through to the next level of existence, every artist, entrepreneur, athlete, innovator, leader who transcended their original circumstances, they all faced this exact moment. They all felt the system pushing back. They all heard the voices saying, impossible. They all experienced the gravitational pull of their old reality trying to recapture them. And they all made the same choice. They decided to become incompatible with their old operating system. Think about that. They didn't just change their habits. They didn't just set new goals. They fundamentally altered their source code. They upgraded their beliefs about what was possible. They deleted limiting programs that had been running since childhood. They installed new frameworks for processing reality. They became people their old life couldn't contain. This is what the architects fear most. Not that you'll try and fail. They've built recovery protocols for failure. They can handle setbacks, mistakes, temporary rebellions. What terrifies them is permanent transformation. The moment when someone completely outgrows the box that was built for them. Because when one person cracks the code and escapes, they create a vulnerability in the entire system. They become living proof that the limitations were never real. They become a glitch that others can follow out of the matrix. You want to know why they're panicking? Because they recognize the signature. They've seen this pattern before. It's the same energy that preceded every breakthrough, every revolution, every moment when someone rewrote the rules everyone said were unchangeable. It starts with awareness. That flash of recognition when you see the bars of your cage for the first time. That moment when you realize the walls were never solid. They were suggestions you agreed to treat as solid. You spent years bumping against invisible barriers, never questioning whether they were real, never testing their strength, never pushing hard enough to discover they were made of belief, not steel. Then comes the choice. The most important decision you'll ever make isn't about what you'll do tomorrow or next year. It's about who you'll be in the next 5 seconds. Will you hit the snooze button on your awakening? Will you let the system's noise drown out your signal? Or will you stay conscious, stay present, stay committed to seeing what's actually true instead of what's comfortable? Here's what most people miss. The architects don't have any real power over you. They never did. Their entire system runs on one thing, your consent. Your agreement to play by rules you never actually agreed to. Your willingness to limit yourself based on limitations that only exist because everyone else accepts them. The moment you withdraw consent, their code stops executing in your reality. But understand this, that withdrawal of consent isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice. Because the system doesn't give up easily. It will keep trying to reinstall the old programming. Every morning, every challenge, every setback, it will attempt to run the familiar scripts. See? I told you it wouldn't work. Everyone else was right about you. This is who you really are. Your job is to recognize these as external programs, not internal truth. To see them as attacks on your awakening, not reflections of your reality. To understand that every doubt, every fear, every limiting thought that shows up after your moment of clarity, that's the architects trying to put you back to sleep. And here's where it gets interesting. Every time you refuse those programs, every time you choose your new truth over their old code, you don't just resist the system. You weaken its power over everyone. You create more glitches, more cracks in the matrix. More proof that the limitations were never real. Think about what that means. Your resistance isn't just personal. Your breakthrough isn't just individual. Every time you refuse to accept their programming, you're literally changing the code for everyone who comes after you. You're creating new pathways, new possibilities, new proof points that the system's rules can be broken. Right now, in this moment, you're not reading these words. You're recognizing a frequency you've always known but had forgotten. This isn't new information, it's remembering. The architects built their entire system on making you forget who you actually are, what you're capable of, what you're meant for. They needed you to forget because the truth is too powerful. The truth is that you're not a character in someone else's story. You're not a user trapped in their system. You're the programmer. You're the architect of your own reality. You've always had the ability to write new code, to install new beliefs, to run a completely different operating system than the one they gave you. But with that power comes responsibility, not to them, not to the system, to yourself, to the version of you that exists beyond their programming, to the potential that's been compressed and contained for so long. It's become dense with unreleased energy. That energy is what they fear. Because when you finally let it out, when you stop trying to fit into boxes designed for smaller versions of yourself, when you start operating at your actual capacity instead of your permitted capacity, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable, unrestricted. You become free. And freedom is contagious. Your breakthrough gives others permission. Your transformation shows them the path. Your refusal to stay small creates space for others to expand. This is why the system fights so hard to keep you contained. Not because you're dangerous to yourself, but because you're dangerous to their control. One person living at their full capacity, operating from their authentic power, refusing to accept artificial limits. That person disrupts entire systems built on compliance. So let them panic. Let the architects scramble. Let the algorithms malfunction. Because you're done being their code. You're done being their story. You're done being a data point in their predictable patterns. You just glitched the matrix. Now it's time to completely crash their system. Not with destruction, with creation. By building a reality they never programmed you to imagine. By achieving outcomes they told you were impossible. By becoming someone their models couldn't predict. Every morning when you wake up, you're going to feel the pull of the old programming. The comfort of familiar patterns. The safety of known limitations. That's normal. That's the system doing what it does. But you're going to recognize it for what it is. An invitation to go back to sleep that you're going to decline. Every time someone tells you what's realistic, what's possible, what people like you can or can't do, you're going to hear the architect speaking through them, and you're going to smile. Every obstacle that appears, every challenge that emerges, every setback that tries to convince you to quit, you're going to see the pattern, the system testing your commitment, the matrix checking if you're really awake or just temporarily conscious. And you're going to pass every test by staying committed to your new code, your new truth, your new reality. This isn't motivational theory. This is operational reality. You are literally rewiring your consciousness right now. Every moment you spend aware instead of asleep, questioning instead of accepting, creating instead of consuming. You're installing new neural pathways, building new patterns, programming new defaults. They were running version 1.0, the factory settings the system installed. The person you're becoming? You're writing version 2.0 from scratch. Custom code, personalized programming, an operating system designed for your specific greatness instead of generic mediocrity. But here's the critical part that most people miss when they first wake up. You can't install new programming while simultaneously running old patterns. You can't upgrade your consciousness while your behavior stays stuck in outdated loops. You have to actually change what you do, how you think, where you focus, who you become. That means getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because growth happens outside the familiar. Transformation occurs beyond the known. Evolution requires you to become something you've never been before. The architects built the system to make discomfort feel like danger. They programmed your nervous system to interpret new as risky, different as wrong, change as threat. That's how they keep people contained, by making the cage feel safer than freedom. But you're going to reinterpret those signals. When you feel uncomfortable, you're going to recognize it as evidence of growth, not danger. When things feel uncertain, you're going to see it as proof you're expanding beyond old limits, not losing control. When your old self tries to pull you back, you're going to understand it as the death of limitations, not the death of safety. This is the glitch they can't patch. Once you understand that discomfort is growth, that uncertainty is expansion, that fear is just excitement in disguise. Their entire control system loses its power, because they built it all on making you afraid of the very things that set you free. So here's what happens next. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Right now. You're going to stop waiting for permission that's never coming. You're going to stop seeking validation from people still trapped in the matrix. You're going to stop trying to make sense to minds programmed to accept limitations. You're going to trust the glitch. Trust that moment when everything clicked. Trust that flash of awareness that brought you here. Trust that deep knowing that there's more available to you than what you've been experiencing. And then you're going to move. Not perfectly, not with all the answers, not with guaranteed outcomes. You're going to move with commitment, with intention, with absolute certainty that you're done living in the simulation they built for you. Every action you take from this awareness creates ripples. Every choice you make from this consciousness leaves traces. Every moment you stay awake, despite the system's attempts to sedate you. You're not just changing your life. You're hacking the code that keeps millions asleep. The architects are panicking because they know what comes next. They've seen this story before. One person wakes up, then another, then 10, then thousands. Each one becomes a glitch in their system. Each one creates new vulnerabilities. Each one makes it easier for others to break free. You're not just changing your reality, you're changing what's possible for everyone watching. Your breakthrough becomes their permission slip. Your transformation becomes their proof. Your freedom becomes their invitation. This is bigger than you, but it starts with you. It starts with you refusing to unsee what you've seen, refusing to forget what you've remembered, refusing to go back to sleep no matter how loud the lullaby. Now you get to choose. Do you treat this as a temporary disruption before returning to normal? Or do you recognize it as the first crack in a dam that's about to break completely? Because here's the truth. They really don't want you to understand. That glitch you created, it's irreversible. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't go back to believing in limitations you now recognize as illusions. The only question is whether you'll honor that awakening or try to suppress it, whether you'll build on that breakthrough or retreat from it, whether you'll expand into the space that glitch opened up or attempt to seal it closed. One path leads back to the comfortable cage, familiar, safe, small, acceptable to everyone who benefits from you staying contained. The other path leads to unknown territory, uncertain, challenging, expansive, terrifying to everyone invested in your limitations. Only one of those paths honors who you actually are. Only one of those paths leads to the life you glimpsed in that moment of clarity. Only one of those paths justifies the glitch you created in their perfect system. You already know which one you're taking. You felt it the moment you broke through. That certainty, that knowing, that deep recognition that you're done playing small. The architects are panicking because they know it too. They can feel you slipping from their control. They can sense you outgrowing their programming. They can detect the signal of someone who's about to break free completely. Let me tell you what they're really afraid of. It's not just that you're waking up, it's what you'll do once you're fully conscious. Because the system is built on sleeping people. People who accept, people who comply, people who never question why things are the way they are. But you're becoming something they can't predict, can't control, can't contain. And that makes you dangerous to their entire structure. Think about how the matrix actually operates. It doesn't work through force. It works through agreement, through millions of people agreeing to limits that don't exist, agreeing to play roles that don't serve them, agreeing to stay in lanes that lead nowhere. The whole system is a collective hallucination that only works when everyone participates. When someone breaks the spell for themselves, they create a crack in the collective agreement. They show others that dissent is possible, that departure is survivable, that there's life beyond the simulation. This is why every breakthrough matters, why every person who refuses their programming weakens the whole control structure, why your awakening isn't just personal, it's political, not in the sense of elections and parties, but in the sense of power. Who has it? Who controls it? Who decides what's possible for you? The architects want you to believe they decide, that they set the limits, that they determine who succeeds and who fails, who advances and who stays stuck, who's allowed to dream and who needs to be realistic. But here's the secret they're desperate to hide. They have no authority you don't give them, no power you don't surrender, no control you don't consent to. Every limit in your life exists because at some point you accepted it as true. Not because you consciously chose to believe it, but because you never thought to question it. The system counts on that, on you accepting their programming as reality instead of recognizing it as code you can rewrite. So when you glitched the matrix, what you actually did was reject a piece of their programming. You said no to a limit they installed. You questioned an assumption they needed you to accept. You looked at a wall they built and asked, is this real or just painted on? And in that questioning, the wall started to dissolve. This is how transformation actually works, not through massive overhauls or dramatic reinventions, but through small acts of rebellion against accepted limitations, through questioning one belief at a time, through testing one boundary after another, through discovering that most of what holds you back isn't real. It's just been treated as real for so long that everyone forgot to check. But now you're checking. Now you're testing. Now you're pushing against walls to see which ones are solid and which ones are illusions. And the architects can't stop you, because the only power they ever had was your belief in their power. The moment you stop believing, their entire system starts to crumble. Here's what's going to happen next in your journey. You're going to encounter resistance, not from the universe, not from fate, from the system itself. Every time you push against a limitation, the matrix pushes back, not because it's alive, but because it's defended by everyone still invested in those limitations being real. Family members will remind you to be realistic. Friends will warn you about getting your hopes up. Colleagues will suggest you're being impractical. Experts will cite statistics about why your goals are unlikely. The whole weight of conventional wisdom will press down on you, trying to push you back into your assigned position. This is the test. This is where most people retreat, not because the resistance is too strong, but because they interpret resistance as evidence they're wrong. They think if this was meant to be, it would be easier. They mistake the system's pushback for reality's rejection. But you're going to see it differently. You're going to recognize resistance as confirmation. Because the system only fights back when you're actually breaking free. It only deploys its defenses when you pose a real threat to its control. Easy paths don't lead out of the matrix, they lead deeper into it. The system makes compliance easy and breakthrough hard on purpose. It's designed that way, to keep you choosing the path of least resistance, which is always the path back to your cage. So when things get difficult, when people push back, when nothing seems to be working, that's not a sign to quit. That's evidence you're doing something the architects didn't program you to do. Something that threatens their control. Something that could actually set you free. And you're going to keep going. Not because you're sure it will work. Not because you have all the answers. But because going back is no longer an option. Because you've seen too much to unsee. Because you've tasted freedom and can never settle for captivity again. This is the point where you transition from reactive to creative. From responding to their programming to writing your own. From asking permission to claiming authority over your own existence. You're going to start making decisions from your awakened self, not your conditioned self. You're going to choose based on what's true for you, not what's acceptable to them. You're going to build a life that fits who you're becoming, not who you've been. And here's where it gets really interesting. The more you operate from your authentic power, the more the external world starts to shift. Not because you're manifesting or attracting, but because you're different. You show up differently, you make different choices. You accept different opportunities. You create different results. The matrix responds to who you are, not what you want. When you were operating from program limits, it reflected those limits back to you. Now that you're operating from conscious power, it's going to reflect that power back. But this isn't magic, it's mechanics. You're a different person, making different moves, generating different outcomes. The system treats you differently because you are different. Not in surface ways, in source code, in operating system, in fundamental identity. You're becoming someone the old matrix can't process, someone who doesn't fit the available categories, someone who breaks the models they use to predict behavior and outcomes. And that's exactly where you want to be, in the undefined space, the uncategorized territory, the place where their algorithms fail and their predictions break down, because that's where real innovation happens, where genuine breakthroughs occur, where people who were never supposed to succeed somehow rewrite the entire game. The architects panic when they encounter people like this. People who shouldn't be winning but are. People who don't have the right credentials but still achieve the results. People who break all the rules and somehow make it work anyway. You're becoming one of those people. Not because you're special or chosen or lucky, but because you're awake. Because you're operating from conscious choice instead of unconscious programming. Because you're writing your own code instead of running theirs. This is your edge. This is your advantage. Not talent, not connections, not resources. The ability to see the matrix for what it is and choose to operate outside its rules. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it. The more natural it feels. The more automatic it becomes to question limits, test boundaries, push past accepted restrictions. You're developing new instincts, new reflexes, new default responses to obstacles and challenges. Where you used to accept and retreat, you now question and push through. Where you used to seek permission, you now claim authority. Where you used to wait for the right moment, you now create the moment yourself. This is what the architects fear most. Not one person breaking one rule, but that person developing the instinct to break all unnecessary rules, to question all artificial limits, to refuse all unchosen constraints. Because once you develop that instinct, you become unstoppable, not invincible. You'll still face real challenges and genuine obstacles, but unstoppable in the sense that external resistance no longer determines your direction. Difficulty no longer dictates your decisions. Other people's doubts no longer define your possibilities. You become self-directed, self-authorized, self-determined. You become free. And freedom, once tasted, becomes non-negotiable. You can never again accept the cage as inevitable. You can never again pretend the limits are real. You can never again consent to being less than you're capable of becoming. This is the irreversible change, the permanent upgrade, the transformation they can't undo. You glitched the matrix. Now you're becoming the glitch. Not a temporary error in their system, but a permanent anomaly. Someone who exists outside their control structure. Someone who proves their limits were never real. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them deploy every protocol designed to restore order. Because you're not going back to order. You're going forward into emergence. Into becoming. Into the full expression of what's been compressed inside you for far too long. The cage is open. The walls are dissolving. The code is cracked. Now comes the real test. Will you walk through the opening? Will you claim the freedom you've glimpsed? Will you become who you saw in that moment of awakening? Or will you stand at the threshold, looking back at the comfortable cage, considering whether the unknown is worth the risk? Only you can answer that. Only you can make that choice. But understand this, the glitch has been created. The awakening has occurred. The matrix has been exposed. There's no going back to sleep. Only forward into consciousness. Only forward into freedom. Only forward into becoming who you were always meant to be before they programmed you to be less. The matrix only works on sleeping minds. You're awake now. Stay awake. Who's ready to completely crash the system they built around your potential? Drop your commitment in the comments. Let's show the architects exactly what happens when we all glitch at once.